Summer 1943, Camp Crossville, Tennessee. The brown liquid fizzing inside the bottle caught the German soldier's eye. He had never seen anything like it. After 2 years fighting in North Africa, surviving on hard biscuits and ersatz coffee, this sweet, carbonated drink called Coca-Cola seemed impossible. A miracle in a glass bottle. It cost 5 cents from the camp canteen, the same price, the guards told him, that American children paid with their allowances. Across the United States that summer, 371,683 German prisoners of war were discovering a truth that shattered years of Nazi propaganda. They had been told that America was weak, chaotic, and decadent. Instead, they found a country where ice cream was an ordinary dessert, soft drinks a daily indulgence, candy bars so common that guards gave them away. These small, sugared luxuries, things most German children had never tasted, began dismantling an ideology. They revealed a new arithmetic of power, written not in weapons or slogans, but in chocolate and carbonation, in ice cream and abundance. America's industrial strength was visible in every bite, every sip. The desert's end. May 1943, Tunisia. The Afrika Korps surrendered, and nearly 250,000 German and Italian soldiers entered Allied captivity. They were veterans of desert campaigns, men who had pushed the British to Egypt under Rommel's command. They expected harsh treatment. Propaganda had prepared them for starvation. But within hours of capture, they were handed American K-rations, those same meals that American soldiers complained about. To the Germans, they were banquets: crackers, processed cheese, candy, fruit bars, sugar tablets, cigarettes. In North Africa, the U.S. Army served pancakes with syrup, fresh eggs, milk, foods that had vanished from German tables years earlier. Even before they reached America, the education had begun. Crossing the Atlantic, the Liberty ships carried them westward, massive steel-bellied vessels built faster than any shipyard in history. One was finished every 42 hours. Each month, up to 30,000 prisoners crossed the ocean aboard them. The records show they ate well, 3,500 calories a day, equal to the crew's diet. Fresh bread, meat, vegetables, coffee with sugar and milk, even ice cream. Yes, ice cream, churned by shipboard machines in the middle of the Atlantic. The USS General M.B. Stewart served it on July 4, 1943, 10 gallons per batch. For men who hadn't seen ice cream since before the war, that frozen sweetness in the open sea felt unreal. When they reached Norfolk and Newport News, they saw an America their leaders had said could not exist. The Norfolk Naval Base covered more ground than many German ports combined. The docks were stacked high with cargo. In the exchange shops they saw rows of candy bars, Hershey, Mars, Nestlé, all sold for the same nickel as anywhere else in America. Then came the train ride inland. Passenger coaches, not cattle cars. Dining cars serving fried chicken, vegetables, pie, and coffee. They learned this wasn't generosity. It was ordinary American service. Camp Crossville. The camp had electric lights, hot water, and heated barracks. Comforts unknown on the front. But it was the PX store that changed them most. There they found Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, RC Cola, every brand chilled and waiting. Candy bars for 5 cents. Ice cream where freezers allowed. Cigarettes, beer with 3.2% alcohol. Each prisoner earned 80 cents a day, later raised to $1. Enough to buy 16 bottles of Coca-Cola. 16 tastes of impossibility. Coca-Cola became a symbol of something larger. Industrial democracy itself. In 1943, the company produced 5 billion bottles. Every American serviceman was guaranteed a 5-cent Coke anywhere in the world. Every prisoner saw that promise kept. The same drink, the same taste, from Maine to Texas. Consistency on a scale Germany had never achieved. The syrup came from Atlanta, bottled across the country, and delivered with mathematical precision. Camp Hearn, Texas, consumed 7,000 bottles a week that summer. Ice cream, too, was everywhere. Camps with proper refrigeration served it regularly. The Army called it essential for morale. There were even ships built just to make it. At Camp Shelby, Mississippi, on July 4, 1943, prisoners watched Americans hand-crank freezers, turning ice, salt, sugar, and cream into gallons of the impossible. Later, electric machines replaced the hand cranks. Chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, butter pecan. More flavors than most German towns had known before the war. 10 cents bought a cup, a bar, or a sandwich. And sugar. There was sugar on every table. In Germany, civilians received just 280 grams a month when available. In America's camps, bowls of it sat out, free for the taking. At Camp Aliceville, Alabama, when humidity ruined several hundred pounds of sugar, the kitchen staff simply threw it away and ordered more. The German kitchen workers stood silent, horrified. They had never seen waste born of such abundance. Chocolate told its own story. In Germany, it was a memory, reserved for officers and propaganda photos. In America, it was everywhere. The military alone bought 380 million pounds of chocolate during the war. Hershey, Mars, and Nestlé turned out bars by the millions each month. At the camp exchanges, prisoners chose between brands. Some preferred Hershey's solid bar, others liked the sweeter Mars. It was an act of democracy they'd never experienced, the freedom to choose between varieties of plenty. The Red Cross parcels arrived monthly, filled with luxuries their families in Germany couldn't imagine. Chocolate, instant coffee, processed cheese, crackers, canned meat, soap, and cigarettes. To the men behind the wire, these were not rations. They were proof that the world outside the fences was overflowing. Thanksgiving, 1943. That November, the Americans served turkey to everyone, guards, soldiers, and prisoners alike. Roast turkey with stuffing, mashed potatoes, gravy, sweet potatoes, cranberry sauce, vegetables, pumpkin pie, coffee, and milk. It was the same meal eaten by millions of Americans across the nation. Even enemies received it. The logistics of feeding 400,000 prisoners the same dinner as their captors spoke louder than any sermon. Equality through food, a concept that no German officer could have imagined under the Reich. Then came Christmas. Packages from civilians poured in. Homemade cookies, candy, writing paper, games. In Tonkawa, Oklahoma, townspeople brought sweets to the camp gates. In Hearn, Texas, churchwomen handed out treats to men who only months before had been fighting their sons. This quiet mercy, this generosity toward enemies, broke something deep inside those men. They had been taught that kindness was weakness, but here it was strength. Work and witness. By 1944, labor shortages sent prisoners into the fields and factories. They picked cherries in Michigan orchards, bound for maraschino jars. Fruit meant not for survival, but decoration. They saw factories rejecting perfectly good produce because it wasn't pretty enough for cans labeled Del Monte. In the sugar beet fields of Nebraska, they watched machines turn harvest into white crystals faster than an entire German province could manage. They learned that America produced 7 million tons of sugar a year. They worked near schools, too, where American children were fed hot lunches, milk, vegetables, bread. Sometimes they even saw ice cream sold in cafeterias. The thought that school children could buy ice cream while German children faced hunger stunned them into silence. A nation of equals. Some prisoners were allowed under guard to eat in American diners, small-town restaurants serving anyone who could pay a few coins. A hamburger for 25 cents, Coca-Cola for 5, pie for 15, ice cream sundaes for 25. They watched farmers, clerks, and businessmen sit side by side at the counter, served by the same waitress, paying the same price. No uniforms, no ranks, just people. It was democracy, ladled out with coffee refills. And the numbers confirmed what they saw. America in 1944 produced 7 million tons of sugar, 5 billion bottles of Coca-Cola, over 500 million gallons of ice cream, 119 billion pounds of milk. Even under rationing, Americans consumed what Germans considered unimaginable luxury. In those camps, German prisoners began sending food home, not receiving it. With their wages, they bought chocolate, coffee, canned goods, and mailed them to starving families in Germany. 11 million parcels crossed the ocean that way. It was an inversion of everything they had believed. The victors fed the defeated, and the prisoners nourished the free. By late 1944, the lessons had become undeniable. German civilians, living on rations that barely sustained life, opened parcels from America filled with coffee, chocolate, and tins of meat, sent by sons and fathers still in captivity. The irony was too great to ignore. Freedom in Germany meant hunger. Captivity in America meant plenty. American rationing only deepened the contrast. The U.S. limited sugar to 2 pounds per person each month, still more than triple the German allowance. Even rationed, Americans ate as Germans never could. 28 ounces of meat per week, milk every day, sugar and coffee, without thought. The statistics were clear. In 1944, Americans consumed 10 times as much sugar per person as Germans. It wasn't arrogance, it was capacity. The quiet strength of industry turned toward abundance. And it wasn't only Coca-Cola. There was Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, RC Cola, Orange Crush. Dozens of brands competing across the nation. Each had its own factory, trucks, bottling machines, glass molds. The sheer duplication, multiple companies making the same sweet drink, symbolized a prosperity beyond control or central plan. A single bottling plant in Texas could produce more soft drinks in a week than Germany did in a month. The machinery, the logistics, the freedom to choose. All these were lessons the prisoners learned not from speeches, but from observation. Spring 1945, the final blow. As the war neared its end, newsreels flickered through the camps. American soldiers marching through ruined German towns, handing chocolate and chewing gum to children. Those small hands reaching for candy became the image of a new world. The same GIs who had once faced the Afrika Korps now carried enough sweets to share with the enemy's children. In those moments, ideology collapsed completely. When films of the liberated camps reached the prisoners, they watched American soldiers giving their own rations to survivors. Kindness amid horror. The ultimate contrast to the system they had once served. By the time the war ended, many prisoners had gained weight, healthier than when they were captured. Their families back home, by contrast, were thin, weakened by hunger. The truth was visible on every returning face. Homecoming. Between 1945 and 1946, they went home, to cities in ruins and farms stripped bare. Some carried Red Cross parcels unopened, saving them as gifts: chocolate, coffee, canned milk. To children who had forgotten sweetness, these treats were treasures. They spoke of America not as conqueror, but as revelation. They told stories of ice cream served in prison, of sugar bowls that never emptied, of a soft drink so plentiful it was wasted. Those stories would shape the future. Many of those former soldiers became advocates for the Marshall Plan. They knew America's power came not from conquest, but from creation. They had seen a society strong enough to share, rich enough to waste, confident enough to feed its enemies. The lesson was clear: freedom produced abundance. Control produced scarcity. In the years that followed, those lessons became the quiet foundation of a new Germany. Men who had once marched under swastikas now studied American production methods. They remembered the uniform taste of Coca-Cola from Maine to Texas, and they understood what it meant: standardization, efficiency, coordination. They had seen factories that could turn sugar and milk into millions of gallons of ice cream without rationing, bottling plants that made joy routine. They brought those lessons home. By the 1950s, West Germany's economic miracle was underway, built not on conquest, but on productivity. Many of the men who had learned in American camps helped shape it. They knew abundance could be democratic, that prosperity could exist without empire. Some became importers of American goods. Coca-Cola returned to Germany in 1949, its logo now a symbol of peace instead of decadence. Ice cream parlors modeled after American soda fountains appeared in cities across the West. Candy bars and chewing gum became tokens of recovery, sweet reminders of a different kind of victory. Former prisoners helped introduce supermarkets, wide aisles, open shelves, products in endless variety. They understood what that meant, that true strength was not in discipline or scarcity, but in giving ordinary people the luxury of choice. In memoirs written decades later, they recalled it with wonder. One officer, captured in Tunisia, said in a 1975 interview, "We expected to defeat a weak, divided America. Instead, we found a nation that could give ice cream to its enemies. That was when I knew we had lost more than a war. We had lost our world." Another veteran, interviewed in 1985, remembered his first taste of Coca-Cola. It was like drinking the future. Sweet, fizzing, unnecessary, and available to everyone for a nickel. That bottle contained everything Germany was not: abundance, democracy, joy. These memories, carried across decades, outlasted propaganda and politics. The final lesson. Historians would later call it re-education through abundance. The prisoners had been shown, not told, what democracy could create. Every meal, every bottle, every taste was a quiet lesson in freedom's efficiency. Daily calories, 3,300 to 3,600. Sugar, 4 pounds a month. Meat, 2 pounds weekly. Milk, 1 quart a day. Ice cream, served regularly. Soft drinks, unlimited at 5 cents each. Compared to German civilians, half the calories, almost no sugar, no ice cream, no soft drinks, the evidence was undeniable. They had seen a society that could afford generosity, a nation so confident it could share its luxuries with those it had defeated. The taste of democracy. Years later, the children of those prisoners would study in America, drawn by the stories they'd heard, of candy aisles that seemed endless, of ice cream that never ran out. They found those stories true. Supermarkets gleamed with light and choice. Soda fountains still hissed with sweetness, and somewhere in that abundance, they recognized the quiet power that had once changed their fathers' hearts. Because in those prison camps, in the heat of a Tennessee summer or the chill of a Midwestern evening, something profound had happened. Men who came as enemies learned that freedom could taste like chocolate, that democracy could fizz in a glass bottle, that the greatest victory of all was not in conquest, but in creation. A war had been won, not only on battlefields, but in kitchens, canteens, and ice cream parlors. The men who left those camps carried home a truth that reshaped a nation: that the strength of democracy is its ability to feed, to share, to give. Sometimes, history's most enduring victories are served not with weapons, but with kindness and with a bottle of Coca-Cola on a hot summer day.